Let's go. Welcome to our live show. Crazy week, but I wanted to start out tonight's show with a even crazier story out of Leesville, Louisiana. So I don't know if any of you guys are from Louisiana. Maybe you know this area. This story says a Leesville man is jailed after allegedly stealing an air conditioner and air conditioner parts in the area. Justin Ford is suspected in 2 of several recent air conditioner unit and part thefts, according to Leesville Police Department. A local business on North 5th Street reported a stolen air conditioner on January 4th. According to LPD, on January 7th, LPD received a separate report that an air conditioner had been damaged and parts were stolen. LPD identified Ford as a suspect in both thefts and arrested him on January 15th. He faces 2 counts of theft over $1,000 and 1 count of simple damage to property. So I thought the investigation is ongoing. So I thought this was a crazy story. Obviously, this is maybe a little bit of an older story. It looks like it was from back in January of this year. Kind of makes me wonder what he was stealing them for. Was he using them to fix someone else's air conditioner, or was he, I don't know. Maybe he didn't like these people. Maybe this was more of a vandalism kind of thing. Like he was like, oh, we're going to steal your air conditioner if you're going to, I'm going to take this fight to you by stealing your air conditioner. No AC for you. I know Louisiana can get pretty cold. Pretty hot during the summer. I don't know about during the winter. So anyway, so hey to Clarence. Hey to NYC HVAC. Hey to Tom. And it looks like Clarence said, just wanted to start by saying thank you for fielding my question last week and helping me decide to go with multiple single zones instead of one multi-zone heat pump for my home project started. Good stuff. Let us know how that goes. I don't remember the specifics of your question last week, but I think it's, pretty cool. You said project is started, so obviously it's not done. You wouldn't say started if it was done already. But yeah, let us know how that turns out. He also says labor of stealing units more than the units themselves. Labor of stealing those units. I'm not sure if he, what he was doing with them. It's just crazy, that story. Tech Junkie says, I have a question and I'd like to know. Tech Junkie, you sometimes come out with some pretty crazy questions, so I'll do my best to answer it. But sometimes you come out with things I got to look up off the show. He says, Daikin fit, do they ramp down? If so, what's the purpose of the cooling profiles? They do ramp down. It's a fully inverter system, and I will have to look into that. I have seen where you can set the profiles, but we usually don't change it from the factory setting, and maybe that has something to do with the part of the country you're in or some other reason why you would want to change that profile. I know you asked one other time about the boost that's on the Daikin fit, and we have never had to turn that on either. So I think it's just a matter of where you are in the country with some of these things and whether or not you need some of these features that they have. So, but yeah, if you got any heating and air questions that are not as technical as Tech Junkies, just kidding. If they're technical, bring them on. I was just before the show started. I don't know if he made it to our show, but I was helping a guy on our website, HVAC Guide.com, and they were asking some pretty technical questions. I don't know if they were installing the unit themselves or what was going on, but some of the questions they were asking it's not something a normal homeowner would ask. So I don't know what was going on there. But yeah, let's see. Clarence says, can we talk about whole house fans today? Debating if that is a cherry on top of my heat pump projects. Where are you located, Clarence? I know whole house fans were kind of the thing back in the day. They were the cat's meow. But I will say that today they are they are a hole in your ceiling, basically, into the attic. And so a lot of guys, I do know that if you do like a heat load calculation, it's something that you have to take into account if they have a whole house fan. So, for those of you that don't know, in California, the hot part, for those of you that don't know, back in the day, they used to have these things called, and I think that's what Clarence is talking about. They had these whole house fans. And I say back in the day, maybe it's still a thing in certain parts of the country. I don't know, but, I have seen them around here, but they're usually pretty old. And, back in the day, if your house got hot, you would, open the windows and then turn on this fan, and it would pull air. It would call, even if there's no wind that day, it would cause air to kind of a draft to blow into your house. And, it was their way of air conditioning back then. So let's see. Tech Junkie says, how about thermostat location? I think I'm having issues with the thermostat satisfying too soon and shutting down the unit. Interesting. Yeah, I've got to dive a little bit more into that, Tech Junkie, as far as when you're having that issue, because, I know like with a mini split, if you turn it off of the auto function, you are causing it to not ramp down enough. And so, maybe that's what you have going on as well. So I understand what you're saying there. Did you turn the boost function on? Because if you did, that could be a big cause of what you're describing as well. It's meant to be a more aggressive type of cooling and then turning off if you did have that turned on. If you did, turn that off and see if that makes a difference. Arch out of Arizona says, was it a cooling tower? I'm not sure. He must be talking to one of these other folks on their question. Or maybe he's talking about the whole house fan. I don't know. But a cooling tower and a whole house fan are two totally separate things. Tech Junkie says that it is off. So yeah. So again, if you've never joined us before, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I do my best to answer them, but I don't know everything. And there's usually a couple other pros that join us on our show. And if I don't know the answer, possibly they will. So feel free to answer, or feel free to drop your question there. Let's see. How about we do a quick breakaway from our questions here? And again, if you do have a question, drop it there. We'll get right back to it. But I've got my new little segment videos here that I'm going to start off with. And let's jump to our breakaway segment where I ask you the questions and see what your thoughts are on a few things. Okay, so tonight's question is, when you are buying HVAC, and you don't necessarily have to be in the market for one right now, but if you have ever bought a heating and air system, or you're going to, what is your biggest concern when you're buying HVAC? What is your biggest concern when you're purchasing HVAC? Drop your answer in the chat. We'd love to hear that, and we will go over your answers here. Boom. Back to our chat here. Nicholas says, HVAC guys suggested upstairs attic fan to blow out the soffit because of low airflow upstairs. Was that a good idea? HVAC guys suggested upstairs attic fan to blow out the soffit because of low airflow upstairs. Was that a good idea? Can you give me a little more context on that question? Are you saying that they said that the, attic fan. So I think you're talking about, one of those attic fans that removes heat from the attic. One of the things that now, and this might play a role, if depending on where you are in the country. I'm in Virginia. I'm near the coast. It can get quite hot during certain parts of the year. And we have a lot of heating and air systems located in the attic as well. And so what we'll do sometimes, and one thing that I've kind of gotten on board with is having folks install these solar powered attic fans. And so they're usually in the roof. It's not something we even install or sell. So, usually when I recommend that to folks, they'll know that I'm not just trying to sell them something. But if I get an attic that has poor ventilation, it's not, removing the heat. There's not enough draft, not enough air circulating, or that heat is just kind of sitting up there. The cool thing about those versus some of the other ones is, number one, it's solar, right? So it runs off the sun. Number two, whether they're quiet or not, they only run during the day. So at night, that has been a concern for folks, where they'll say, my attic fan's loud and it's keeping me up. And well, the solar powered ones, they shut off at night. They only run off the sun. There's no battery. They just shut off. At least the ones I'm talking about have no battery. And then the last thing is, not only do you save energy from not burning electricity to run the fan, but you save energy because you're removing all this heat from your attic. You're removing this oven, basically, that is attached to your home at that point. Some of these attics, 150 degrees plus is nothing. They'll get really hot, and here you've got your heating and air system and or ductwork located in the attic possibly, and you're trying to cool down your home, and your system is sitting in an oven, So we've had people report to us big time savings on their electric bills after installing one of those. Clarence says, biggest concern is what the power of the new unit is going to draw versus my old setup, and will it make my house more comfortable, and is it worth the price difference per month? Clarence, I don't remember exactly all the ins and outs of your question last week. I think in general, as long as it's installed properly and all your ductwork is sized properly, that's one of the things. I was listening to a podcast this week, and they were talking about how a lot of these 20 SEER, 18, 20 SEER inverter systems they're installing, that people don't realize they're actually only getting, 11, 12 SEER out of the system because the ductwork isn't sized properly. And so, and other things, they went through a number of things, but that was the gist of it. And so, if that's a concern, definitely have them inspect everything and make sure it's all done correctly. Sean, welcome to the show, says attic fan is in attic, house fan is in ceiling. Love attic fans in Pacific Northwest with poorly designed 2-story homes, and it helps the second floor. Amen to that. Mr. Griffin, Craig, I bet you're a handsome guy. All those Griffins are just really handsome. That's what I've been told. At least that's the lie that I've been telling everyone else. Craig says reliability of equipment and cost benefits for buying the most efficient units, meaning can I recover my investment? I think that's a really big concern for a lot of folks, right? Because when you're comparing just simple things like the SEER rating, there's no way to really know. Like, so if you bought a car and we all know that the gas mileage is usually an estimate. There's no way to know 100% if that's going to be dead on accurate, right? But let's just say it is accurate for a moment. You can definitively, based on how many miles you drive a day to, say, work or wherever, you can definitively know, okay, is this enough of an investment? Will I recoup my money in the long run? And so with heating and air systems, a lot of folks are concerned about that. That's a really good point. And then, of course, you touched on the reliability of the equipment as well. Yeah, the kind of money that folks are spending these days on a heating and air system, reliability is definitely another big one. Eric says, and welcome to the show, Eric. Eric says, I am concerned about indoor air handler and duct noise and about humidity control mostly. Also, I live in the north, so I am getting a dual fuel, so I am not sure what temp the gas furnace should run. So Eric, let's unpack this entire comment for a second. The first thing is, if you're getting a dual fuel system and you're saying at what temperature should it switch over? What's that balance point temperature is what we call it. check out my video that I did on balance point. I think it'll help you. It will not give you the exact temperature. And the reason is every house is different. Every situation is different. Every heating and air system is different. So in other words, if you've got a heat pump that can warm the home versus another heat pump that can't keep up at that temperature, your home, how well it's built, and what part of the country you're in, all those things play a role in what your balance point temperature should be. And definitely check out that video. But back to your other point, you're concerned about the indoor air handler and the duct noise and about humidity control mostly. Yeah, humidity is a big one. A lot of folks, I think that as time has gone on, folks are looking at some of these solutions like, these communicating inverter systems because of how well they can dehumidify, how well they can control that humidity. And, it went from folks just saying, oh, well, will I recoup my money, this extra investment, from an efficiency standpoint? But then they started seeing all these other advantages like humidity control, for example, one of the things we've been looking at is how well a Daikin Fit does. So that, we're a Daikin dealer, and how well the Daikin Fit does as a communicating inverter system, how much better it is at dehumidifying than these other non-communicating inverter systems, right? And so, that plays a role in this as well. It's not just how efficient it is anymore. It's how quiet it is. It's how good at humidity control is it? How good is it at, let's see, I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden, but I did a video on like the 6 things that inverter systems do, in comparison to, a single stage system and things like that. But, comfort is going to be better. You're not going to have that deadband temperature and things like that. So folks are considering those types of systems more than ever before is kind of the point here. Let's see. Just sifting through some of your comments here. Bear with me. No, not humid. I'm in inland California, hot and dry. Oh, so you're wanting to add humidity to the home, I guess is what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know that that's going to play a huge role in what heating and air system you're going to select. Because I think in the grand scheme of things, if you need to add humidity to your home, then you need to look at doing a humidifier, ultimately in the grand scheme of things. Tech Junkie says, SEER is BS. COP is where it's at because mathematically you can calculate power usage, and that's available information from the NEEP website. Yeah, I think SEER and even the new SEER 2 stuff, I think they're heading in the right direction, but that's a really good point. Folks should definitely be considering, all the ratings when they're comparing 2 different systems. I know a guy that I was just talking to him not long ago, and he's in the industry, but he was telling me that he'll usually educate his customers more on EER and HSPF more than SEER, So that's a really good point. Clarence says, yeah, we already open all of our windows every evening. That's if you do a whole house fan, I don't even know where you can buy them now. I'm sure they have them. I just, where I live, it's just they're not done as much, Eric says, I'll watch your video. Good stuff. You just watch all those videos and hit that subscribe button. Arch says, what's the most compact air handler that can be matched with the Daikin Fit? I'm wondering if a linen closet can be converted to a house and air handler. So right now the Daikin Fit, I think if you're going air handler, it can only be paired with the FEC air handler. So there's no comparing as far as, I want to go more compact or I want to go more. When it comes to the Fit itself, it has to be that FEC air handler. Maybe that'll change, but during this show, that's the case. Michael says, I recently got a quote for my mom's house for $1,450 for a bad motor fan for labor and parts. My cousin came by and said some insulation got in the fan. He used some tape to fix it. Cost $0. That's interesting. Huh. So that maybe the insulation on the side of the air handler had separated and was starving the system for air. And so this company came in and quoted you almost $1,500 to replace the fan motor when the fan motor, I guess, is still good, is what you're saying. If that's the case, I would not call them again. I think there is something to be said for. I think there are good companies out there that they'll hire inexperienced guys that are still learning, and and sometimes they make mistakes, right? They misdiagnose something. They're still learning. And that's one side of it. But, if you get these guys that they are just intentionally trying to sell folks things they just simply don't need, that's another thing, right? That's the problem in the industry. Eric says, my unit is oversized currently and has a return duct in a wall cavity. Getting 1 ton smaller unit and having main return ducted direct to air handler so wall cavity won't be restricting return. Interesting. How do you know it's oversized? Did you have someone do a proper heat load calculation? I mean, I certainly believe you, because most systems, when new construction is done, they're not sizing them correctly, but that's interesting. Let's see. Bear with me here. Bruce says, you really have to go through friends, family, and neighbors to find a good contractor, and not just Google, because from my perspective, I've had a lot of junk messed up. It's a good point. I've always said, if you can use someone else as the guinea pig, and maybe that's not the right way to put it, but if you've got a neighbor, a family member, somebody that's tried multiple companies and they were able to have a front row seat, then obviously, use that. You don't have to try 10 different companies to find a good one if you had someone else that already, was kind of the guinea pig there. Eric says, load calculation said I need a 35K cooling with 4-ton AC currently. That's interesting. So it wasn't just a little oversized. That, like you said, it's a whole ton. That's a lot. Bruce says, Josh, I heard if you have a ridge vent and you can't have an attic fan because of various reasons, is that true? I'll be honest, Bruce, I have no idea. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're saying you can't do one, or maybe they're saying you shouldn't do one because the air circulation won't be as good or whatever. But I've seen houses with ridge vents, with soffit vents, with gable vents, all kinds of vents, and they're just not enough, or they are being blocked, or whatever the reason is. And so that's why I will push folks, for those attic fans, those solar attic fans, to get that heat out of there. In my dealings, I've never cared. I've never said to the customer, oh, you have a ridge vent, so, we probably shouldn't do a solar powered attic fan. I think if a roof is installed correctly and it's got the right vents and everything is installed right and all that good stuff, then the hope and dream is you would not need any extra mechanical, ways of moving that air. But the great thing about the solar attic fans is, unlike some of the older ones, or still today, they still have electric attic fans, you're not burning electricity, right? But, as time has gone on, more recently, folks are even getting to the point now where they'll have a conditioned attic space. And so they're getting away from all these different ways of venting their attic space and just completely sealing it, insulating it, and then conditioning it is I feel like the newer way. We're seeing newer houses go that way, and we're seeing, folks that even if they already have an unconditioned attic, go that route for one reason or another. So there's many benefits to that, but I would definitely defer to your local pros because you can make mistakes. If you don't want to just go and condition an attic without looking at different things such as the science of the building before you go sealing things up, because you can have issues with things condensating if you're not careful. Arch says, are the Daikin package heat pumps rebadged Goodman units? If not, besides a better warranty, what are the advantages of a Daikin package unit? So I think I'll say this. I think some of their products do work tandemly. So but I don't think that's uncommon. I think there are guys out there, they'll be like, oh, it's a rebranded Goodman. And that may be true for some of their products. Some of their products that maybe they used, better screws or better technology, whatever it is, or it's very possible. Like I remember years ago ordering it was a Payne heating and air system, and I get the air handler and it has a Carrier badge on it. And so, I don't think it's uncommon for them to use the same setups or same products for different references and things like that. So I think it would just depend on which exact product you're talking about. But I do know that there are, now I don't know if this is what you're asking for, but there are going to be instances where, and this isn't just for Daikin, this is for all the brands. If they're making one brand versus another, one might have, say, a stainless steel heat exchanger when the other one has a galvanized steel one. Or one might have, a better communicating setup. So like Daikin has their ecosystem and their Daikin 1, and, their other brands don't have those. They'll have, their EcoNet technology or Comfort Bridge or whatever it is they're calling it. I think EcoNet might be Rheem. But anyway, so the point is, it just kind of depends. Some of their products are, rebranded, if you want to call it that, but some of their products are completely, better or different in the grand scheme of things. Eric says, company that quoted me the heat pump dual fuel did load calculation for free when I asked. Nice. Some companies will do that. Some companies will, some companies will not. Let's see. Tech Junkie says, realistically, an attic should never be conditioned. Builders should install ductwork into fur downs or the basement and vent the attic. A cool roof would be better. Yeah, I think that there are general rules, but, I was watching a video last week where the guy was saying, look, we'd love to put the ductwork down in the basement or in the crawl space, but these are all these houses are slab. They're all built on a slab. Let's see. Tech Junkie says train units came with both American Standard and Train logos in the box. You just put on whatever you want. Yeah, I've seen that too. I've seen the even the newer air handlers. They have that little the polycarbonate cabinets have that little square looking label area, and you can literally just pop that out and pop the other one in, and it's the same product literally. Eric says, my current AC died. I am getting an inverter non-communicating GE heat pump. Would an ECM air handler set to ramp up and down work well, or would it have to run at constant CFM without communicating? So I think I think in the grand scheme of things, if I have a fully inverter, non-communicating system, then I want that system to be as variable as possible. They do make, I know, like, for example, Bosch makes an inverter non-communicating system with a constant torque motor. And because of that, it has certain limitations. I have one in my own home, so I would know. Arch says, I've noticed a lot of similarities with the ICP brands of packaged heat pumps, and they look identical except for the color and brand name. Yeah, the ICP brands, they are all the same stuff for the most part. And I don't think they hide that or in any way. I think a lot of the ICP stuff, they have all these different brands, but they're, trying to capture different markets or whatever. In my area, there's only one ICP brand that I could even purchase that I know of, that we have a supplier around here, and they're not even what I would call a good supplier. They don't just sell heating and air stuff, which, that's not the end of the day. But if I'm buying a heating and air system and I'm a contractor and I'm selling to my homeowners, I don't know, if I had to pick between two different suppliers and one of them, sells, well, I'll just be honest, they sell appliance parts is what they sell. So like if you need a fridge, I don't know, one of those shelves in the fridge, if that breaks or cracks and you need to replace it, they sell that kind of stuff. But in addition to that, they also sell some ICP branded, I think they're Tempstar heating and air systems. And so, we've bought some stuff from them, but that's just not something I would, lean into. The moral of the story is I don't have any good suppliers for any ICP stuff where I live anyway. Tech Junkie says, well, if it ran a constant CFM, then you're going to have mold and at least unbearable humidity. Yeah, it just depends on the setup. So that you have to be mindful of the CFMs, and you have to be mindful of the airflow and making sure that it is dehumidifying and so on. So that's getting in that whole pickle that Bosch had with their 1.0 systems. Clarence said, Eric, where do you live? So he's asking Eric. And Eric's answering. If I had an NG, I'd keep it. Tech Junkie, what is NG? NG. What am I missing? NG. Is that next generation? No. I just Googled it. Natural gas. Got it. We were rolling last week. I don't know if all you guys were here last week for last week's show, but I was just rolling right from the start of the show all the way through to, I think it was like 9:20, and I finally, got my head above water to breathe a little, and from keeping up with all the questions. And this week I feel like it's a little, you guys are a little slower. You've dialed it down a little bit. Arch says, around here, day and night seems to be the ICP brand that is more common. Yeah, I don't know. Like for example, if I wanted to buy a day and night system, I don't even know who I would call right now. I see it on the internet all the time, and I know it's an ICP brand, but I've never had, I don't have a supplier around here if I even wanted to purchase one for that. Gary says, good evening, Josh and friends. Back home after a week down in North Carolina with the folks. Their new carrier ducted heat pump system working well in that southern heat. Well, good stuff. Hopefully they never need a part for it. No comment. I ain't gonna say anything further than that. Philip says, what's the next refrigerant? Will it be as effective as R410? Well, Philip, yeah, it's a whole nother pickle here. I think the next two refrigerants are going to be R32 and R454B. It depends on which brand you select, on whether or not which refrigerant they're going to have. And Clarence says, I've heard R32 is coming and is amazing. R32 is actually in 410A. So yeah, I think if it was not an A2L refrigerant, R32 very well could have been what we switched to when we got rid of R22. So they had a little more time went to go by before they made that switch. CO2 is the real gem. Yeah. What is that? R290? And we'll see what happens with all that, right? Let's see. Let's do our next breakaway segment for the night. We all know this is your favorite segment. I think some of you have even asked for it, and that is our Goofy Inventions segment. Tonight's Goofy Invention segment, we are going to introduce, some of you know that I'll sometimes throw out goofy HVAC inventions. Some of them not so goofy. Some of them you guys have said, man, I wish that was an invention. And so tonight's goofy invention is, have you ever seen that stuff that they call pegboard? So for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, let me just kind of Google it here. Share this tab. So this, have you ever seen like pegboard? It kind of looks like this right here. And then a lot of folks will kind of hang it in their shop. Like here's a pegboard that's got, of course, IKEA's got their, got to have their own pegboard, but it's not the holes, but just the little slats. This almost looks like a metal pegboard that you can hang shelving and different things. And so pegboard, I have it in my shop. I will usually use it to hang tools off of. It'll kind of look similar to this right here. And tonight's goofy invention is, if you were, instead of having floor vents that we're all used to, instead of having a hole in your floor with a floor vent, instead we all have a flooring that has something similar to pegboard with these holes, and that is where your heat and AC come out of. So instead of having a big hole in your floor, a big vent, instead of that, you would have a bunch of tiny holes. So that's tonight's goofy invention. Let me know what you think of that wonderful invention in our chat section, HVAC register. So instead of something that looks like that in your floor, right? Here's one that's on the wall. Here's one in the floor. So instead of that being in your floor, you would have flooring that had sort of like a pegboard look with all this nice warm or cool air coming up out of it. Let me know what you think of my goofy invention tonight. Eric says, my dad loves pegboard for organizing his tools. See, he could get heat and AC coming through his floor or his walls or his ceiling with this pegboard, and he could hang his tools up on the same wall. Tech Junkie says, laugh my beep off pegboard. Yes, the previous owner of my house removed a whole wall, I think, of drywall in my garage and installed that. Problem is that the wall is adjacent to the living space. Well, that's better airflow. That's the whole point of my great invention. Instead of calling it the goofy invention, I should call it the great invention, right? Let's see. Eric says, can you put pegboard in your work vans? I don't want to say it's pegboard, but we do have what we call the headache racks that go between the cab area where you sit up front, and then it separates you from the back part where all your tools and everything are, parts and everything. And we'll sometimes use that like it's pegboard. It's got the little holes in the, in the metal, the grate, and we'll hang our gauges and hang different things off of that. Eric says, that sounds crazy. Wouldn't you have to oversize it since the airflow through pegboard vent would be less? No, Eric, it would be perfect. It would be perfect. There would never be another heating and air problem for the rest of our lives if we had this great invention. One of you guys have got to patent this, the pegboard heating and air registers, flooring, and then, you know, all of our problems will disappear. Tech Junkie says that that's actually a great idea for heating climates. That's actually what gave me the idea was if you ever, you know, some of you guys might have this in your own home, but if you don't, if you ever stay somewhere where they've got the heated bathroom floors, you know, I know a guy that put it in his entire house. He actually came off of his water heater with these PEX water lines, and he ran all through his house, and he set up different zones with circulating pumps, and that's how he heated. It was one of his heating sources for his home. Cooling would be too low velocity coming out. No, Tech Junkie, it'd be perfect. You'd never have problems again. Gary says, yes, Josh, they have electric furnaces with those electric coils at 10 kW. So to come in at 40 degrees, would that be where Griffin Air would set the X over point? 10 kW, so come in at 40 degrees. I'm not sure what you're asking exactly. I can tell you that when if this is a serious question, maybe you're messing with me because I was messing with y'all a little bit. But if this is a serious question, Gary, I apologize. And we don't do a balance point on our electric furnaces with coils. So if we install a heat pump outside, we treat it like you would a normal air handler, and it would be treated as auxiliary heat, meaning there would be no changeover, there would be no lockout temperatures. It would be in addition to. So that heat pump would be heating the coil, and then on the supply side of all of that, we would have our heat strips kick on there. Eric says, I replaced the 1950s vent covers with modern vent covers and got better airflow. 1950 cover holes were very small. Nice. Cooling velocity, bigger holes is key. Heating was okay in the 1950s. We've come a long way since the 1950s. You know, they probably didn't even know what velocity or duct sizing or any of that was. I mean, they probably put the biggest system they could in their homes, and the biggest one they could afford, and if it was oversized, then it just cooled faster, right? And all the homes were so drafty that it didn't matter. You know, they didn't have the humidity issues that we have today because homes are built so tight today, you know? So anyway, I can't believe nobody liked my new invention tonight. My pegboard flooring or wall that somehow we would have to build the ductwork to blow cool air out of these holes, I guess. Anyway, hey, if you can't laugh at your own jokes, your own dad jokes, then nobody else will. That's the way I look at it. We're going to be wrapping up here soon, guys. It's 9:15, so we've got about 15 to 20 minutes still left in our show. And as always, we end every show with you guys sharing the heating and air companies that you know of that are good across the country. Share who they are, where they're located, and who knows, you might have someone else see this and give them a call, and you were able to help out a really good company. So shout out those good companies. NYC HVAC he must have a good company because he's here with us, right? 23 people in the chat. Hit that like button. Amen to that. I stand behind that comment. But yeah, so if you guys have any questions or any good companies you can shout out, slip those in there. As I said earlier, tonight's chats, after last week, I'm okay with it. Last week, the chat was rolling. I could barely breathe at times, and keeping up with everybody's questions. And in fact, I'm lucky that we weren't here until after midnight. It was just so many questions coming in. Maybe that had something to do with how hot it was. You know, maybe it's cooled off a little across the country and not as many people caring about air conditioning tonight. But yeah, we've had a little slower, a little more chill show tonight. Gary says, okay, Josh, got it. Yes, Rutherford HVAC in North Carolina set the heat pump to 40 degrees to switch over to an electric furnace. The company did a very neat job. I took photos too. Nice. I like it. Let's see. Let's see where these guys are. Rutherford, HVAC, North Carolina. I'm looking to see where you were vacationing without you telling me where you were vacationing. If my oh wow, so you were down in the, I guess, the southern western part of the state. So I was actually looking to see if you were near the Outer Banks or so, but no, you were very far from the beach. So shout out to Rutherford HVAC, or Rutherford Heating and Air, in Spindale, North Carolina is where they're located. Gary, who's one of our long-term guests on our show, always joining in on the chat. Gary just gave you a good shout out, and so shout out to those guys. NYC says, I love the fact that you start with the news in the industry. Yeah, it's just something that I started doing and it seemed to stick. So I think we've got a few, we got our questions, right? We've got our segments that we break away. I'm trying to, create a little bit of entertainment. And then of course, each week we start the show with a news story in the industry. John says, what's your choice? Duct vanes versus Wise instead of a hard 90? I think it just depends on the situation, John. I don't know that I have a real preference. I think when I'm in the home and I know that I've got a guy that works for me that I haven't seen him do a lot of the Wise, but I understand what you're asking, and I think it just depends on the home, to be honest. Mike says, I live in Florida, and I'm considering the Daikin Fit heat pump. Do you think this is a good unit? Mine is now 2.5 ton units. Mike must be new to our show. Guys, he asked me if I think the Daikin Fit is a good unit. In fact, Mike, check out my video I have coming out tomorrow. It is specifically about the Daikin Fit line. If you haven't seen any of my videos before, we actually toured the Daikin factory was it last month or the month before? Time flies. But we actually recorded and are going to show some things in that video that no one has ever shown publicly before. And so check out that video. It's on the Daikin Fit assembly line right here in the USA. And I think you might like that. But I think ultimately, to answer your question, we install a lot of the fits. I just purchased one today. I didn't purchase it. Someone purchased it from us, and then I ordered it. But yeah, I'm a big fan of it. We've done several videos on it. I did another video where I compared the sound, how good the decibels are, the decibel levels in comparison to, say, a single stage system. Check out that video as well. John says, do you like returns in every bedroom, or are you concerned about the excess duct runs driving up the static? I don't know if it's I do know. So in Virginia, we don't typically do returns in every single bedroom. I think it depends on the home. I know out west, those guys do returns in every single room and then some. But here where we are, we don't do that, and it's not always necessary, in my opinion. If you lay out the ductwork correctly and you've got a good builder, you're working with a good builder that is mindful of, the space that you're going to need and to do everything properly, then, usually we don't necessarily need one in every single room if you lay it out correctly. Philip says, I wish Daikin can make an indoor coil that can replace the first company. Yeah, I don't know if you're talking about the first company, if you're talking about those hydro coils, or if you're talking about something else. They've got some pretty unique things. And I think Daikin, for the most part, has really leaned into the, they actually invented what we now know as the VRV technology. Some companies call it the VRF, but that variable refrigerant technology, and they've really leaned into those heat pump systems that are fully inverters And I think that's where the Daikin Fit came from, as far as not the VRV, but, just having that inverter technology and being able to fit it all into this little unit that can be, literally installed in very small locations compared to other systems out there. Tech Junkie says the Daikin Fit is the best dehumidifying unit available. I don't know if that's true, but I know it's way better than a lot of them. John says, do you like ventilating dehumidifiers in your climate? Yes. So before I even go any further, yes. And if so, do you hook up the HVAC ducting or have separate ducting? It depends, again, per house. I have seen houses where we connected to the existing ductwork, but I would say as a general rule, in a lot of cases, because we have so many crawl spaces around here, if I've got a good conditioned crawl space that's encapsulated, an encapsulated crawl space that's been encapsulated properly, then I'm going to do that ventilation down there. Eric says, I had very small returns added to my bedrooms and it helped. Only could fit 6-inch flexed returns. Oh man, that's a tiny return. But even that small amount of extra CFN made a noticeable difference. NYC says, I lived in Cypress, Texas. No kidding. That's where I'm going next week for 2 years and used to drive by the factory every day. Yeah, I'm going to Daikin. Any of you guys, if you haven't seen their, I think it's called Service Excellence. Let me look it up here. Boop, boop, boop. Service Excellence. I think that's what it's called. Oh, man. I should have looked it up before I actually showed you guys my screen. Let me try Ben Middleton podcast. Hopefully this brings it up. And of course it's not going to. Oh, shucks. I'm going to be on their podcast next week, and I am embarrassed to say, here I am on this live show, and I am drawing a blank. I thought it was called Service Excellence Podcast. Let's see if that does it. Yeah, this is crazy that I'm not being able to find this. Bear with me, guys. I'm sorry. Because I want to show you guys. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. It's called the Accelerated HVAC Success Podcast. And so they're going to have me on their podcast next week. And I'm going down there. Well, I'm not going to be on it next week. I'm recording it next week. And so I'll be down in Houston, or Cypress is actually where I stay when I go next week. So if you guys haven't seen that and you like Daikin or Amana or Goodman, check out their podcast. I think they're putting some very interesting behind-the-scenes stuff. I think most of their content is probably more for contractors. It's not necessarily for homeowners. But I still think that there's some really good stuff in there. And if you are a homeowner considering one of their brands, you might get to see how the hot dogs are made a little bit, right? You might get to see some of the, the things they talk about and more techie type, behind the scenes type stuff sometimes. But anyway, NYC, yeah, he says, can't wait for the video. Yeah, that video's just on the Daikin Fit line, the folks that we interviewed right there. And then, of course, some of the things that, we show of that assembly line have never been showed publicly before. So that's kind of cool. And but if any of you guys that are watching this, if you haven't seen that video I did on the Daikin Fit, or the Daikin factory as a whole, check that video out. I think it's called I toured the largest HVAC factory in the world, is what I think is what it's called. John says, have you installed many of the Daikin's high SEER large can units, or just of the Fit? The DZ20 and the DZ9 make Energy Star. Are they quieter than the Fit? How do they how do they choose between each for the client? So yes, we've installed, I would say we've probably as a whole installed more fits than the DZ20s or DZ9s. But we've still installed, I think just, 3 weeks ago, we had 3 in 1 week. It was crazy. My supplier Horace, who's sometimes on this show, we were just ordering for some weird reason. We were offering all of them, and we had several customers in a row want those units. Are they quieter than the fit? That I don't know the answer to. I know they're still pretty quiet, but I do know that they're a little more pricey. So some customers will just stick with the fit. They're both communicating inverter systems and both super efficient. So a lot of folks will just go with the fit. Eric says, would the two small returns I had added increase static, or is small return better than no return? Well, from a static standpoint, they shouldn't have increased the static. In the grand scheme of things, they should have lowered the static overall. However, 6 inches is pretty small, so I don't know that it would have affected it tremendously. But I think, as you said, small return is better than no return. I think the real answer is properly sized return is better than no return. But yeah, especially if you were having issues and the only thing you could get in there was a 6 inch, then, it is what it is, I guess. Diana says, welcome to the show, Diana. We have a new furnace and AC system installed yesterday. They used a lot of HVAC tape on the furnace and the box behind the furnace. Is this normal? Please help. Well, I guess it depends on how much they used and what they used it on and what they used it for. If they used it just to seal the, the insulation and things like that, I think, that would not scare me. Maybe they were, just trying to make it look nice and neat, and they were just using a lot more tape than usual. But I usually like to see them mastic as well, even on a system replacement. My guys will tape and some of the seams, and just depends on the situation, but then they'll still mastic with that as well. So, sorry, Diana, I don't know if I can give you the perfect answer there. Without knowing a little more specifics there. Gary says, folks are 8 miles north of the South Carolina border, 100 miles east of Tennessee. Have a good week, Josh and friends. Always fun time here. Be here next Tuesday for more. So, any of you, if you haven't left yet, it looks like a lot of folks are popping off here, but I do want to let you know, because I am heading to Daikin next week. There is Adrian popped in here. Next week, I'm taking my equipment with me, but there's a lot of variables. I'm going to try to do the live show, but if you don't see this fat face pop up at 8:30 next Tuesday, then maybe take a peek at our community tab, and I'll post there if for some weird reason, if we, just are not able to do the show. But I'm going to take it. It won't be my normal setup. But we're going to do our best with, portable microphones and still do our show. So that's the plan. And, make sure you watch out for that. I will answer these last 2 questions, and then we are going to wrap up. But as I'm answering them, if you know any good heating and air companies across the nation, make sure you share who they are and where they're located. John says, good question, Eric. Oh, he's talking to Eric. Robert says, your videos have been helpful with me replacing my HVAC system. Nice, Robert. I'm glad we could help. And so we're going to wrap up here. It is 9:31. We will be back next Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So find out what that time is for you. And we'll be back with our goofy segments and taking your questions live. So let's see. Diana just slipped one last comment there. Maybe mastic tape. I don't know. It's just a lot of tape. Yeah, I don't know, Diana. Just kind of depends. I think in the grand scheme of things, let's make sure it's sealed. I'll take a little more tape over a properly sealed duct, versus, someone that maybe it looks nicer and then they didn't put enough tape, you know. NYC says Cypress County Air Innovations HVAC. So shout out to those guys. And we'll see you guys next week. We'll see you live, and make it a great week. Take care.